Now, I think I've told you this story before about the dad who came home from work. He was mad because a deadline had been moved up, and he had all this pressure on him about finishing this project that he was assigned, and he knew that after dinner he was going to have about 3 or 4 hours more work to do. Well, Mom also came home upset. She'd overheard several of her coworkers making some rude comments about other people in the office. Now she was worried about what they probably were saying about her. Both the mom and the dad, they wanted sympathy from each other, but neither of them got it. So that night they sat down at the table for dinner, cranky and grumpy. I've been there before. Have you?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Exactly. Well, they have this 5-year-old daughter named Emily. She prayed before dinner. I think she kind of got a sense of the lay of the land because she said, God, it's Emily. How are you? I'm fine, thank you. Mom and Dad are mad. Now, I don't know why. We've got birds and toys and mashed potatoes and each other. Maybe you can get them stopped being mad at each other. Please do, or it's just going to be me and you having fun tonight. Amen. Then there was the man who came into the pastor's office and slumped down into a chair. Said, it used to be so easy to be joyful. When I first became a Christian, my joy just kind of overflowed. I was always smiling and laughing. Now my faith seems so bland. My prayers are routine. My life is actually boring. Nothing's really wrong. I've just lost my joy. What should I do? I've been there too. There are times in life when joy is easy, kind of bubbles up inside of us, kind of like listening to the Cameroon choir or watching Lucas as he's directing it. It just kind of gives you just a sense of joy. But what do you do when joy is a struggle? Now, I'm not talking about those times where you're in the midst of a crisis or going through grief. That's different. I'm talking about ordinary life that just doesn't seem exciting anymore. It's boring. It's ordinary. Where do you find joy in a life that seems to be missing it? When you're bored or just feeling blah, what can you do to experience the joy of the Lord? Now, that's the question I want us to keep in the back of our minds this morning. This is the second Sunday of our 4-week stewardship campaign. Last week we talked about the stewardship of time, how important it is to put our time in proper perspective in the things that we do. Today, as I mentioned earlier, we're going to be talking about talents, like Joy did so well. In the 17th century in Italy, in a town called Cremona, there lived a young man named Antonio. Now, Cremona was famous for its music. And of all the things in the world that Antonio wanted, he wanted to be able to make music. Unfortunately, he couldn't sing. He couldn't play an instrument. His voice was high and kind of squeaky, so he wasn't welcomed into the boys' choir. And when he took violin lessons, the neighbors complained. They complained so much they persuaded his parents to make him stop. But still, Antonio wanted to make music. Couldn't sing or play an instrument, so he often found himself alone. And so he whittled. He could whittle almost anything. His friends kidded him because it seemed like that was the only talent that he had. Well, one day, Antonio learned that there was a world-famous violin maker named Niccolo Amati, son of Andrea Amati, who actually lived in Cremona. Next morning, Antonio went to visit Amati and begged to serve as his apprentice. Many years, Antonio studied. and he worked. And his knack of whittling grew into a skill of carving. And soon his hobby became his craft. Patiently, he fashioned many violins, striving to make each one better and more beautiful than the one before. And when he died, he left a legacy of over 1,000 violins, each one bearing a label that said Antonio Stradivarius. Today, Stradivarius violins are the most sought-after violins in the whole world. The clarity of tone, the careful craftsmanship remain untouched by the centuries. Now, Antonio Stradivarius couldn't sing and he couldn't play, but what he could do, he did. And now, 300 years later, more than 300 years now, his violins are still making beautiful music. The world around him told him he couldn't make music because he couldn't sing or play an instrument. That wasn't his talent. But Antonio discovered what his talent was, and in turn transformed wood into what has been called the epitome of all violins. And all you need to hear the word Stradivarius, and you know it's quality. So where do we find joy? What can we do to bring joy into our lives? See, joy comes in part by being the person we were created to be, and by doing what God has gifted us to do. When we use our talents, joy will be part of our lives. Now, remember the man that I talked about at the beginning of the sermon who met with his pastor and wanted to talk about joy? But he was kind of surprised by how his pastor responded. His pastor told him this: well, how have you given joy to someone else? Have you shared your faith with your family, your people at work? Have you served people in the community who are hurting? Where are you serving at your church? In what ways are you using the gifts that God gave you for the building up of His kingdom? See, joy isn't something you can store up. We only keep joy by giving it away. Our joy grows as we share in the work of Christ in the world. You find joy by doing what God has created you to do, by using the talents and gifts you've been given, and being the person that God has created you to be. Most of you may recognize the name Philip Yancey. He's an author of many religious and theological books. We did a study of his on prayer a number of years ago. Well, he made a fascinating observation about finding joy. In his career as a writer and journalist, he said he's interviewed a wide range of people. And so he divides all these people into two groups: stars and servants. For the stars, superstar athletes, famous authors, TV personalities, he's only got sympathy. He says these idols are a miserable group of people. Matter of fact, as miserable as I've ever met. According to the standards of this age, these people haven't made. They're famous. They've got pictures in the magazine. They live in big, expensive houses, he says. But what we don't see are their troubled marriages, the tormented psyches, the incurable self-doubt. Then he contrasts the lifestyles of these stars with the group he calls servants. Servants include people such as relief workers in Bangladesh and language experts scattered around the jungles of South America, translating the Bible into obscure languages. He says, I was prepared to honor and admire these servants, to uphold them as inspiring examples. He says, I wasn't prepared to envy them. But envy them, he did. As reflected on the two groups, stars and servants, he declares that the servants clearly emerged as the favored ones. The graced ones. They work for low pay, long hours, no applause, wasting their talents among the poor and uneducated. Yet somehow in the process of losing their lives, he says, they found them. And they in turn live lives filled with joy. I think that's a message we all need to hear. It's this kind of nonconformist message that runs counter to the prevailing message of our culture. The words of the Apostle Paul in our text challenge us to live lives not conforming to the standards of this age, but to allow ourselves to be transformed and live by the standards of Christ. And when we do it, notice that we don't do it for ourselves, do we? But for others. That's where true joy comes in. Now let me illustrate. Imagine it's Christmas morning, and your mom or dad hands you a present with your name on it. You open it and find inside something that you really wanted. Let's say it's a new iPad. Well, no sooner than you open it and you turn it on and you start downloading music and your favorite apps, then your mom or dad cuts in and tells you, well, wait a minute, that gift isn't really for you. Well, yes, it's got your name on it, and therefore you're responsible to take care of it, to make sure it's always charged, that it doesn't get lost or broken, and has all the right apps on it. But it's actually for your brother or sister. Well, wait a minute, you say disappointedly, I thought it was my gift. Well, yes it is, they respond. It's your gift, but it's not for you. It's for your brother or sister. We gave it to you so that you could benefit them with it. But it's got my name on it, you say. Well, yes, because we gave it to you, but it's not for you. At least not for you alone. We gave it to you for the sake of your siblings. Now, while this might strike you as a kind of funny scenario, it's actually the way God gives gifts, right? He puts our name on the gift He gives us. It's our gift, but it's not for us. It's for those around us. As Peter says in 1 Peter, as each has received a gift, use it to serve one another. The gifts we possess are simply God's grace wrapped in human form. But God's grace is never self-directed. It's always others-directed. And so too our gifts, our talents, are to be used not for our own sake, but for the sake of others. In fact, Jesus assures us of a very radical principle of stewardship. Three things. The more we give away, the more we receive. The more we use our gifts, the better and more useful they become. And to hoard them is not only selfish, but unwise. We find that when we don't give our gifts away, when we fail to use them, or we use them in a self-centered fashion, then, amazingly, they begin to dry up. We become selfish, narrow-minded, maybe even miserable. Iowa's own music man from Mason City, Iowa, Meredith Willson. Everybody recognize Meredith Willson? He wrote The Music Man, the musical. He used to love to tell the story about a band whose music so pleased the king of a long time ago that the king opened his royal treasury to the musicians. He invited them to walk in and fill their instruments with as much gold as they could hold. Now, if you were a tuba player, you were in Fat City. But one man, according to Wilson, dejectedly departed, saying, "And there I stood with my piccolo." Far too many of us practice our stewardship of talent and abilities with the piccolo player's response. We're tempted to consider only how much gold, quote unquote, we can get out of a discovered ability that God has given us for a while to use. In contrast, the Apostle Paul says that talents and skills ought to be shared to make life better for other people. And that should be especially especially true in the church. 1 Corinthians chapter 12, Paul says, all of you are Christ's body, and each one is a part of it. Just think what this idea would make us like if we all believed and followed it here in this congregation. We would leave this place not so much concerned about what we got out of the worship service, but rather asking ourselves how we had helped and what we had contributed. In 1928, Ida Rubinstein asked Maurice Ravel to write a piece for orchestra that began with only one instrument, and then as the piece went on, adding instrument upon instrument until the full orchestra was reached. Anybody know what that piece was? Bolero. The result was a magnificent piece, Bolero. It begins with just flutes. Then the clarinets are added, then the bassoons, and then instrument after instrument is added until the full orchestra plays that haunting tune. Maybe that's the way it ought to be with God's people. We call it the church. Each one of us offering our skills, gifts from God, playing the magnificent melody of Christ alive in the world. Right now, right here this morning, each of us is nurturing a profound talent, gift, ability within ourselves, and we may not even realize it. Often we are just plain scared to try out what we think our gift might be. Often we are conscientiously avoiding situations where our gift might advertently or inadvertently slip in and maybe come or bubble to the surface. Are you a leader? Then don't you dare volunteer to help Linda at the Faith in Action weekend in a couple of months and maybe lead one of those activities. Are you a speaker? Well, then don't you dare to offer to be a liturgist, or when I'm gone, to fill in and preach one Sunday. Are you filled with compassion? Well, then don't you dare go out and help the homeless in our community, or even share your love with those who are sitting in the pew who may need to feel your presence and in God's love this morning. Are you a teacher? Well, then don't you dare demonstrate how much you love kids or how easily you communicate ideas and reveal information to others. Are you filled with a prophetic word for the church? Then don't you dare suppose that anything you might say could make a difference, or step up and volunteer to be a part of our session. Psychologists joke that the two most stress-inducing experiences of human life are approaching death and public speaking. When God offers up the gift of speaking, how many of us are inclined to run forward begging, "Oh, me, please choose me"? But sometimes the talent God has given us may not be what we think we're any good at, or what we find particularly pleasing or enjoyable to do. Sometimes God just has need of us. And I think that's especially true in small churches like ours. Our gift may be something we have to work at long and hard before we feel any modicum of expertise. But a transformed mind cannot be conformed either by the expectations of the outside world or the limitations of our own self-concepts. When we try on new possibilities, new possible roles that might enable us to find and claim new talents for ourselves, we're renewed. Hear this. God never approaches us empty-handed. The reason God offers us these gifts is not to glorify our abilities or to highlight our weaknesses. As members of the living body of Christ, we are responsible for the health and maintenance of the body. Let me say that once more. Because I think it's especially true as we think about our stewardship of our talents and gifts and abilities. As members of the body of Christ, the living body of Christ, that encompasses all of us here, we are responsible for the health, maintenance, and life of that body. That means if something doesn't happen, it's because we haven't stepped up. Whether it be something that utilizes our gifts of love and leadership, or compassion and counsel, or prophesying and teaching. See, these are all exercises we perform for the sake of the body's health. It means serving on session, or on the board of deacons, or helping out with our church and world ministry team, or teaching in Sunday school, being liturgists, or ushers. All are important attributes that we each individually have, one for another, that we can use. Fitness experts preach, if you don't use it, you'll lose it.
Amen.
Each of us must flex our talents in order to keep the body of Christ strong and fit. This morning as I close, I invite you to spend some time this week in prayer, asking God to lead you and guide your thoughts as you reflect on the three following questions. First, what talents has God given to me that I could use to build up God's kingdom here on earth? What talents has God given to me? Maybe some that I know, or maybe some that I don't know, and that God just wants me to try them. Then two, where is God calling me to use those talents? Where can I serve? How can I help to build up this kingdom? And then finally, what do I need to use my talents? Maybe I need to have the courage to go up to Linda and say, hey, I know you're the chair of church and world. How can you use me? Or maybe to go up to Lynn and say, you know, I filled out this questionnaire on fellowship, but I had this idea of a great thing we could do to bring this congregation together. Well, I could go on and on. God will lead you if you ask Him and open your heart. And then, when you've asked these three questions, maybe close your prayer by just asking God that God will open the doors that will enable you to use those talents and abilities and gifts. And then you might hear, you just might hear Jesus say to you, well done, my good and faithful servant. Enter into the joy of your master.